Thank you, Sonario, for sharing your lovely voices with us this morning and for that really lovely song. I like that a lot. I welcome you again into this space, or into the space where you find yourself in this moment, whether it's here in the sanctuary or joining us online. I invite you as a body person, as someone who moves through the world and navigates our human systems and cultures according to your enfleshed body. You are invited to lean into the wonder of our embodied imaginations this morning. We're going to work with two meditations adapted for our use, and the first is from Reverend Kimberly Ann Tomczyk, and the second is from Gwen Matthews. As part of your imagination, you are invited to move your body or participate in a way that's comfortable for your own body. And you know your body best, so I invite you to make these meditations your own. This might include sitting, standing, or giving yourself space to move your body, being mindful of your neighbors. Yes, be mindful of your neighbors. And so close your eyes if that's helpful for giving yourself permission to move. And take a few deep breaths, drawing it down into your belly. As your chest and belly fill, just notice if there's any resistance as you inhale. And as you exhale, notice the sensations in your body. Each sensation in your body has a story. Your stories are the brilliant leaves in our imaginative practice today. You might imagine them up above your head, or to the side of you, or maybe even fallen on the ground. And turn your attention down now toward the earth. Feel the gravity of the earth holding you in place. And wiggle your toes as if they were roots. And if it makes sense for you to wiggle something else for roots, you are invited to do that. Roots connect you to the earth, lending you strength. Gently sway in the wind, turning your body like a trunk of a tree, leaning this way and that, bending as the air pushes and pulls. What surrounds you may sway you, make you bend and feel unbalanced. Wiggle your toes or your roots. Know that your roots can hold you as you grow and learn. A tree is nourished by the soil and water. You are nourished by the food the earth grows and the water it provides. You are cared for and loved by many people. Breathe deeply. Breathe deeply. Breathe deeply. And still yourself. Know that your roots are strong. Wiggle your roots. As we come back to a seated place of listening, and let our chairs support us once again, let your body remember what your imagination has just called forth. Joy is an act of resistance. This is the title of the first poem from the Telecycle, a series of poems by Toy Derricott, grieving the death of her fish. Her poem reads, "Why would a black woman need a fish to love? Why did she need a flash of red living in the corner of her eye? as if she could love nothing up close, but had to step away from it, come back to drop a few seeds, and let it grab onto her as if it caught her on some hook that couldn't hurt. Why did she need a fish, a red thorn, or among the thorns, that flower? What does her love have to do with 500 years of sorrow, then joy coming up like a small breath, a bubble? What does it have to do with the graveyards of the Atlantic in her mother's heart? In my personal reading of this poem, I hear Toy noticing beauty amongst doubt and devastation. As she names it, I hear joy. It's not a disconnected, exhilarating joy, like the joy that we're often sold in advertisements that promise happiness. It's a joy that surfaces from human fragility and propels the poet through the remaining poems in the cycle. It's a joy that allows her to endure. And I think about this kind of joy as durable joy. This morning's worship theme is resistance. This month's worship theme is resistance. And I want to explore durable joy and its role in resistance this morning. I believe durable joy is grounded in our relationships with ourselves, with others, and with the natural world. I am especially interested in human relationships as part of the interdependent web of existence named in our Unitarian Universalist seventh principle. One of my favorite descriptions of honorable human relationships comes from white feminist and poet Adrienne Rich. She writes, "An honorable human relationship, that is, one in which two people have the right to use the word love, is a process, delicate, violent, often terrifying to both persons involved, a process of refining the truths they can tell each other. It is important to do this because it breaks down human self-delusion and isolation. It is important to do this because in doing so, we do justice to our own complexity. It is important to do this because we can count on so few people to go that hard way with us." For years, I looked to Adrienne Rich's hard way as an ultimately meaningful description comprising the whole work of human relationships. The hard way formed a personal foundation from which I could participate in collective resistance, and it made this resistance worthwhile for me. In this work, I moved toward a solidarity and allyship that aligned with my theology of interdependence, embodiment, and intersubjectivity, which can be understood as mutually mirroring our whole selves alongside another person. In short, the hard way was good work. As I continued this work in different community resistance projects, I repeatedly found myself depleted. And who wouldn't be depleted by a process of refining the truths that we can tell each other that can be delicate, violent, and often terrifying to both persons involved, even when it leads to expansively rich and beautiful relationships? While the hard way recognized and accurately described the risk and vulnerability required for an honorable human relationship, it was missing a source of nourishment that could sustain me in this practice. In my search for a source of nourishment, I started leaning more deeply into my queerness. My understanding of queerness comes from Black womanist author and queer ancestor Bell Hooks. She has described queerness as not being about who you're having sex with. That can be a dimension of it. But queer as being about the self that is at odds with everything around it and has to invent and create and find a place to speak and to thrive and to live. And I want to read that last part again. Queer as being about the self that is at odds with everything around it and has to invent and create and find a place to speak and to thrive and to live. Hooke's description of queerness opened up the possibility of joy by suggesting that thriving is necessary for resistance. Her description of queerness provided me with a bridge to Adrienne Rich's Hard Way by acknowledging the reality that we sometimes are at odds with everything around us and inviting us to create new spaces that promote human flourishing. In that description, I hear that we can live in spaces that reflect our inherent dignity and worth, that we can thrive in spaces that consistently reconnect us with our inherent dignity and worth. And ultimately, we can flourish when we honor and celebrate our interconnection with others' dignity and worth as we are reflected by the beauty and awe of the universe. In A Feminist Ethic of Risk, author Sharon Welch looks to an Afro-American womanist literary canon as inspiration to inform her ethic of risk. She observes that denunciations of evil and celebrations of resistance characterize the work of all the novelists in the Afro-American canon that she has compiled. She draws from Black author Barbara Christian, who writes of, and these are Christian's words, a persistent and major theme throughout Afro-American women's literature are our attempts to define and express our totality rather than being defined by others. What Christian describes is not work that is accomplished in isolation. Eugenia Collier writes that the individual is made whole only by awareness and acceptance of this massive Black community. Describing her ethic of risk, Welch rightly asserts that we cannot numb our pain at the degradation of life without numbing also our joy at its abundance. One inspiration from Black womanist authors that informs durable joy is that we must express our whole selves in resistance to how we might be defined by others. We must not remain isolated, and we must risk joy if, as Hooks offers, we are to find a place to speak and to thrive and to live. This is where durable joy resides. Durable joy allows us to access and connect with something bigger than us that is also wholly us. It embraces that we are both simply mourning the death of a fish, as Toy Delicate was doing in the telecycle, and also that we are connected to an expansive history that we cannot possibly hope to contain in any single moment. The points of access to durable joy are sometimes small and easy to overlook. A favorite song that makes you sing out loud, the effervescence of your friend's irrepressible smile, or the peaceful majesty of mountains on the distant horizon. Take a moment and bring one of your own joys to mind, and I'll wait for a few moments while you do that. As you call this to mind, notice what your body does. I'm drawing attention to our bodies because durable joy emerges from and resonates with our embodiment. And for our purposes here today, embodiment is how our bodies move through the world and how we, as bodies, navigate systems that can attempt to oppress and regulate our dignity and worth, according to their often exploitative valuation of our bodies. And what I mean is that our embodiment includes how our body is perceived and interpreted by ourselves and others, both generously and detrimentally. Part of my embodiment is that I am white adjacent, male presenting, and mostly able-bodied, among other things. I want to name that as part of my experience and acknowledge that this has a material impact on how my body interacts with systems of power. Today, I'm focusing on how we can continue the lifelong personal and collective work of resisting detrimental systems of power. Because joy emerges from the experience of our specific bodies, our embodiment. Each of us engages detrimental systems of power differently in their attempt to isolate us and regulate our joy. And I want to be crystal clear. Our sources of durable joy are legitimate. They are legitimate because they are grounded in our inherent worth. And when I say that joy is an act of resistance, I am saying that durable joy resists the regulation of our dignity and worth by insisting that these are inherent and irreducible qualities of our person and of every person. Returning over and over again to durable joy as an act of resistance that is grounded in our interdependence is a renewing process that can hold us when we experience the desolation of our human fragility, and when we are transcendently ecstatic, and everything in the spectrum between those two extremes. Sometimes life can feel like endless resistance, an endless effort to be seen as whole on our own terms. And as we heard in our chalice lighting this morning, sometimes our light goes out. To endure and move toward thriving and flourishing, we must know our sources for durable joy. These are sources that will sustain us as we work to resist systems of oppression. These systems attempt to isolate us, and we must refuse to be isolated. We must find ways to risk moving beyond our isolation and moving toward personal and collective joy. So I ask you this morning, where does your joy come from? What are your sources of durable joy? Who and what can you call on in your moment of need when your own acts of resistance may have depleted you? Maybe your joy comes from the intimacy of relationships, the beauty of nature, or the wonder and ecstasy of artistic expression. Whether you are in a peaceful place in this moment or in a place of desolation, I invite you to notice one thing that can bring your spirit some reprieve. Lean into that. Bring yourself close to that precious source. Carry it with you beyond today. As we practice in our imaginative embodiment this morning, find your roots. The wind will blow and insist on diminishing us. Your roots will remind you that you are not the wind and that you can resist from a place that is interconnected and expansive, a place that is both beyond ourselves and also wholly ourselves. Moving toward the end of our worship this morning, I'm reminded of the words in our opening hymn, "How shall we hold the suffering? We shall hold the suffering singing." That singing is durable joy. In our prayer this morning from Reverend Lynn, we heard, "Praise be to the Creator of queer and trans wonders, of bodies made perfect through self-love, of love that is expansive." Lean into the wonder of your body, of a love that is expansive enough to break down human self-delusion and isolation. That is durable joy. If your spirit calls you to dance or laugh or shout or vote or march or teach, do it. These are all sources for durable joy that can support our living, thriving, and flourishing. They will sustain us through our personal and collective lifelong resistance. Thank you, Amen, Ashe, and blessed be. Please join us, rising in body and spirit, to sing hymn 1024.